Yo, let me make sure everything is looking good, and then we'll start. Mic check, mic check. Alright, I think everything looks good. Maybe, yeah. Alright, so with this stream, I'm touching back on something that I started talking about in the last learning stream that I did, which was 2 streams ago. Um, I was looking into the education system and how it came to be the way it is, and there was a lot of how do I say this? I already knew this, but I dove a little deeper into it in the stream of how John D. Rockefeller had an influence on creating the modern education system for public schools in America, and later down the line how other people followed his example um, in creating a more obedient, submissive workforce that would come out of schools. You were basically taught as students to be submissive and obedient to uh, whoever your boss is. In schools, it was teachers. In colleges, it's professors, whatever, right? But you're always taught to be a worker. And I mean, this is stuff that a lot of people don't like talking about, in my opinion, because there's a whole notion of free will in America, which I think is a massive illusion. There's no such thing as free will. When you're born in circumstances that are out of your control, you're put in schools that are not of your choice, you're made to learn subjects that you didn't decide to learn. There's no free will. There's only conditioning, in my opinion. You're conditioned to think in a certain way, you're conditioned to act in a certain way, and you're expected to behave in a certain way once you've grown up and become part of society, which, like, I mean, I'm it may sound like I'm coming from a bitter place, but it's just partly the realization of what I thought is actually true, which it kind of made me depressed because uh, I was hoping there'd be a more fantasy like picture of why things are the way they are, but no, this is all like controlled. The education system is not the way it is because it happened by accident. It's the way it is because it was supposed to be. I don't know what education is like in private schools, but in public schools, in industrial areas, you're going to it's going to be very submissive. It's going to teach you to be very submissive, obedient, and follow rules, which I think is common in a lot of public schools, not just America, like all over the world. Because business rules the world. Sometimes businesses are bigger than the countries. Sometimes businesses make the countries. So um, they obviously have a lot of power, sometimes over the government. Sometimes businesses are part of the government. So it's something that I was looking into, and now I found this video that I kind of wanted to run through and go over and see if we learn anything new. But yeah, I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it because I'm still salty about it. And I wanted to learn more about why the system is the way it is, and what better way of doing it than to actually research it on stream and go over my thoughts. It's kind of like a journal for me too, because then I can see how my thoughts change over time. Maybe I'll redo this same subject matter later down the line, but yeah, let's just get into it.
So you're John D. Rockefeller in the late 1800s, and you have a big problem. It's the Industrial Revolution and you have this giant oil empire, but you simply can't find enough wage slaves to keep the wheels turning. Unlike today where you can just make a job post online and a bunch of educated laborers will come flocking your way, back then most of America was rural. Most of America lived simple lives on farms. They were homeschooled, they went to schools ran by churches. They didn't know how to work a factory job or at an oil refinery. They weren't conditioned to clock in and out. So you needed a way to educate the population on a massive scale so they could come work for you. However, we don't want to educate them too much now, do we? Remember, knowledge is dangerous. There's a reason why slaves weren't allowed to learn how to read or write. So if you're gonna educate the masses, you have to tread very carefully. Teach them too much and they'll become too ambitious, too independent. They'll think for themselves. They'll become your competitors. Instead, you want to teach them just enough so they can keep your empire running with a happy, obedient smile on their face. So what did you do? You helped pioneer the American public school system. All of a sudden, every parent could just send their kids off to a free public school funded by good old Rockefeller. To the rest of the world, you looked like a saint. You were giving free education to all those uncivilized, ignorant Americans. But you and I know the truth. By dangling the prospect of free education in front of millions of American parents, you were able to trick them into relinquishing their children to the state. That way, for 8 to 12 years of a child's most formative years, you get to condition them to be exactly who you want them to be. You get to decide what they learn and don't learn. You get to decide how they see the world. You get to condition them to be scared, to be fearful, to be obedient, to not chase after their dreams, to accept mediocrity. You get to teach them that if they don't follow orders exactly to the T, they are a failure.
I can't believe it. B is for bitch!
Because these are the traits that make for a good laborer. And it worked. By giving every American access to free, standardized public education, you were able to solve the labor problem in America. Now, every generation that came after it would go into school filled with innocence, creativity, and joy, and they would come out of school as an obedient worker that doesn't want to rock the boat. Workers who are perfectly happy making their employers rich.
Education system is predicated on the idea of academic ability, and there's a reason. The whole system was invented around the world. There were no public systems of education really before the 19th century. They all came into being to meet the needs of industrialism.
Ah yes, our entire education system today was created because John D. Rockefeller needed more workers. But it wasn't just Rockefeller. No, loads of other rich American tycoons poured billions of dollars into creating the modern-day education system we have today. These are the same wealthy dynasties behind big oil, big food, big pharma, and they all wanted to provide you with free conditioning, education, while they send their kids to private schools. As Rockefeller once said, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." These are the dark origins of our education system, and why you want to stay dangerous.
For generations, experts tended to blame failing schools on failing neighborhoods, but reformers have begun to believe the opposite, that the problems of failing neighborhoods might be blamed on failing schools.
I'd like for this country to have a real education president for a change.
I'd like to be the education president.
I don't ever expect to sign my name to any law that is more important than the Education Act in 1965.
The day of reckoning is here.
If you watch this channel, you're probably serious about gaining money and power, which is great. But if you're gonna do that, you're gonna need a great wallet that can keep up with your ambitions. And the wallet I've been using every single day for the in America. Now, every generation that came after it would go into school.
Man puts in a sponsorship. I mean, respect to him, but like, yeah, I'm gonna skip that.
Sponsoring this video.
Gotta make your money somehow, I guess.
The origins of the American education system can be traced back to something called the Prussian Empire. The Prussian Empire is the empire that made up modern-day Germany, and these Prussians were geniuses at controlling the masses. See, in the late 1700s, Prussia invaded Poland, and they won. Prussia now occupied Poland, but the Prussians now faced a new problem. Sure, they controlled Poland, but how were they gonna get the Polish people to accept their new German rulers? They were the colonizers, the enemy, and yet somehow they needed to get the entire population to throw away their Polish identity and to accept Imperial German nationalism. But the Prussians weren't stupid. They knew they had no chance in changing the minds of the adults. The adults were proud Polish people. They were set in their ways. There's no hope in converting them. But the children? The Polish children were much more moldable. And if they could attack the children, they could decimate Polish culture in just one generation. So Prussia created a new 8-year education system, where for 8 years kids would go to school and learn things like reading and writing, but they would also learn how to listen to orders. They would learn how to do as they're told, to respect the authority of their Prussian leaders. And this new Prussian education system worked. One Prussian philosopher brilliantly described their education model by writing, "Education should be aimed at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. When the technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for more than one generation will be able to control its subjects securely, without the need of armies or policemen." It was as poetic as it was true. Basically, if you want a submissive population that you can rule over, you have to destroy their free will. You have to condition them not to think. Thinking is the enemy, and you have to start this conditioning when they're as young as possible. So, every Polish and Prussian child was required to attend school for 8 years. 8 years where day in and day out, these kids were force-fed so much Prussian patriotism that by the time they left school, obedience to the Prussian monarchy was the only reality they knew. The Prussian system was so effective that it caught the eye of one person, an influential American politician by the name of Horace Mann. And Horace Mann planned on exporting this Prussian model to the good old US of A. Horace Mann was passionate about reforming American education. It was his life's duty. So in 1843, he traveled across Europe visiting schools to get ideas. But no education system impressed him more than the Prussian model. To him, the Prussian model was a work of art. Here was the roadmap to molding children into anything the elite wanted. If the Prussian model could remove every single trace of Polish culture, what could it do for America? With the Prussian model, it wouldn't matter if kids were Protestant, Catholic, Black, an immigrant, Native American, or even atheists, because we would be able to permanently instill patriotism, duty, and hard work into all of them. And with Horace Mann's political influence, tax-funded public schools following the Prussian model slowly started popping up all over America. And slowly but surely, parents, teachers, those in charge, and society as a whole started to accept the Prussian model as the only sensible way to educate the youth. Instead of one big class, schools were divided into separate classes for kids of different ages. Horace also wanted mainly women to be the teachers, which is why women dominate the teaching field today. Teachers were even sent to Prussia to learn firsthand how their system worked. Authorities bought into the
Bro, that's kind of interesting. Like, now when you think about it, if you have kids of the same age together, then they're all moving at the same pace. They're forced to move at the same pace. Like, you can't let one kid who excels at something be allowed to sit with the grown-ups for that subject. They are forced to sit with all the other people of their age who may move at a slower pace. And sure, they have classes for gifted students, but even that is like, it's the people of the same age, and you're restricted to move forward faster than others. And if you really think about it, it's the same thing in jobs. Tenure matters more than experience in certain jobs. The longer you're with a company, the higher chance you have of moving up, unless you don't perform well at all. Um, but the people who job hop over and over and over, they get salary boosts. And I think the school system should be the same way. You're in one school, you're getting one education, but then after a year or two, you're forced to move to a different school and get a different education. And some of your friends may come with you to that school, so you're not completely alone. But you're getting a different education from different instructors in a different institution, which will uh, entice you to think more freely and more creatively. But what we have is you're forced to stay in one institution, and you're forced to learn one education, one form of education, and that's it. Um, I don't think that's fair, and I honestly don't like the model of uh, kids of same age being in the same class. I think it should be mixed together, because then there's pure diffusion of creativity. Because if a young kid is talking to an adult kid on a daily, then the younger kid will grow faster creatively and intellectually. and they will also mature faster because they'll see how the kids younger than them behave, and they'll pick up those traits, and that would probably solve a lot of problems for younger kids who just, how do I put it, for younger kids who feel like they don't fit into class because they're either too smart or they find the curriculum to be boring because you're switching up their institutions pretty fast, and you're having them sit with people who are older than them, giving them a new perspectives that people their age can't give them. um, but yeah, I mean, this shit is to me is pretty depressing 'cause having gone through it, and now having the chance to think of it. I'm still going through it because I'm finishing up college, and I went to the campus today to attend a class, and it was the same shit. You know, the professor leading and the children sitting in their desks looking up to the professor as if the professor has all the answers. um, and it, it's not the fault of the professor, it's just how the system is set up. You're not allowed to think for yourself. You're forced to pick up ideas from that one person who is either a professor or a teacher. um, but obviously as you grow up you're given slightly more free will, but it's still directed towards something. Like you may have free will to choose a prompt for your essay, but that prompt has to follow strict guidelines, um, just as an example. So it's the illusion of free will, of you making your own choices, but really the choices were already made for you. Um, and instead of just having one choice, you have multiple choices just behind a curtain, and you just have to put your hand out there and pick one, and that's it. Like there is no free will in the educational system.
The Prussian model so much that by 1864, Congress made it illegal for Native American kids to be taught in their native languages. Instead, they were sent to faraway boarding schools so teachers could kill the Indian to save the man. By the end of the 1800s, the Prussian
crazy.
model had taken over America. And by 1900, almost every American state made public school mandatory, meaning that you had to give up your kid to the states or get the kid taken away from you and thrown in prison. Horace Mann changed the face of American public education forever, but the public school system wasn't in its final form yet, because as much as the Prussian model did wonders for the government, it still didn't do much for businessmen like you. And as John D. Rockefeller, you also saw the power of the Prussian model on the masses, and you planned on systematically infiltrating it.
This is a bit of a dystopian take because it makes you the businessman.
By the late 1800s, school was mandatory. They were using the Prussian model, but there was still a giant problem. There wasn't any standard curriculum to follow. So most kids ended up learning nothing that would make them useful in an oil refinery, mine, or factory. It doesn't matter how submissive or obedient they are. If they don't have the baseline education needed for your labor, you needed submissive, obedient workers that were also educated to your standards, educated on how work will set them free. So what did you do? You went to your closest confidant, a man named Friedrich T. Gates, and together the two of you created the General Education Board. On the outside, the General Education Board sounded like this very official government board that looked over the education system in America. And that's exactly the vibe you were going for, when in reality, you just created this thing out of thin air and named it the General Education Board. That is the power of a great name. And a year later, thanks to your connections in Washington, the General Education Board went official. It was incorporated by an act of Congress in 1903 with the purpose of the promotion of education in the United States of America without distinction to race, sex, or creed. A very noble sounding cause. While at the same time, this entity would be your Trojan horse to inject more than $3.5 billion in today's money into the public school system. Today, a few $1 billion wouldn't make a dent in the monstrosity that is our public school system. But back then, it was still in its infancy, so $3.5 billion was way more than enough to mold it into whatever you wanted. So with the money and the government charter in hand, the board went on to fund a vast number of public high schools, 912 high schools in the southern states alone by 1914. You also funded universities, medical schools, Ivy League schools, so that when kids finished their conditioning in high school, they would continue their conditioning in higher education. These are the origins of America's love affair with college degrees, by the way.
College graduation has never been more valuable than it is today.
And soon other business tycoons started jumping in on the action. By 1905, Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, founded the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. Not because he wanted people to learn about the world and become innovators, but because he needed mine managers, operators, engineers, repairmen, smelters, and railroad conductors. And the public started to catch on all this big money moving into education. In 1914, the National Education Association said that, "We view with alarm the activity of the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations, agencies not in any way responsible to the people, in their efforts to control the policies of our state educational institutions, to fashion after their conception and to standardize our courses of study, and to surround the institutions with conditions which menace true academic freedom." But your infiltration of education had picked up too much steam, too much momentum. There was no way it was gonna slow down now. By 1918, every single state started requiring kids to complete elementary school, and it just picked up from there. From standardized tests to the Carnegie-funded textbooks, to the Department of Education, to labeling and medicating kids that don't do well in this Rockefeller model of education. And your boy Friedrich T. Gates, who you created the General Education Board with, put it perfectly when he explained what he envisioned for America's education system. "In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill onto a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We are not to raise up among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply." That is the education system Rockefeller wanted. One that didn't search for the intrinsic gifts endowed in each of us. One that didn't pump out philosophers, authors, artists, or musicians.
Like
no,
that.
our modern day education.
I would say that if you're intelligent enough, and with the power of the internet now, you can find the holes in the system that's so old and so unnecessary, and deconstruct your mind in some aspects to get out of that loophole of um, being benevolent to those who are not benevolent to you, and being submissive to those who don't deserve submission. I mean, what have they ever done for you to submit to them? A paycheck? I don't think that's enough. Um, but like the whole point that I'm trying to make is that you're conditioned to think that getting paid is the greatest thing, and once you get paid, you could buy all these cool things. But what they fail to tell you is that you could get paid based off of your own skill. You don't have to prove it to somebody else to get paid. I mean, like obviously you have to prove it to the masses to buy your product, but there doesn't have to be a middleman between your paycheck and your skills. That's all a job is. It's a middleman between your skill set and of you getting paid. And I firmly believe that I'm skilled enough and intelligent enough to make something of my own, and then be able to give it to a population that's passionate about whatever I make, and get clean money out of it. Not the black money that I get. I don't know if I can call it black money, but not the black money that I get sitting in front of a desk for somebody else to help them make something that they've always wanted to make. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain. Like, I don't have many gripes about the jobs I've done because they've given me the luxury to think freely. And the jobs I've done are full of free thinkers because I managed to make my way up to them. But the earlier jobs that I did, they were all about obedience for sure. You can't sit, you can't get away from the cashier, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to sign in at this time, you have to sign out at this time, you can only take a lunch for this long. Like, that's all about obedience and submission, you know? And school conditions you to accept that, not question it for 1 minute once you get out of it, because that's all you did in school, you know? So once you go into the job market, you know it's bullshit in the back of your head, but you still keep doing it. Not everybody does. Some people quit, but most people keep doing it because they're like, well, that's how it is. That's what I gotta do. And then there's other people who are like, man, this is bullshit. I know I can do better. So they go and learn some skill or something and get a bullshit certification to prove they have that skill. And then somebody hires them. And then they get hired. They're still doing it. But even a smaller few would realize that if I could do all this for somebody else, why can't I do it for myself and get paid the full amount rather than the small percentage that trickles down to my paycheck for the skill set that I provide to the boss. Um, and at that point, maybe you're ready to start something of your own. Um, Sometimes you get really good bosses, and I've had really good bosses, and you want to support their business, but there's this aching feeling in the back of my head that this is not what I need from life. I need something of my own. And I guess that's the whole thing about ambition, right? Like if the school system fails to kill your ambition, you're gonna be a rogue agent that goes and tries to make its own path and possibly destroy a few things while it goes on its path, you know? And nobody likes chaos and destruction in a logical and well-mannered world, so you're outcasted. Um, but it's up to you to believe in yourself, even if you're an outcast. And because if you sincerely think you could do something, then I mean, nothing is stopping you, right? Even if somebody doubts you, you don't really think of them as high enough to give you the advice that they're giving you, or giving you the doubts that they give you. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but the whole point is that, uh, like right out of high school, at least for me, I was pressured to go directly into college, and because that was the only way to succeed. But the more I've grown up, and always knew this, the more I've grown up, I feel like that's just not true. Like there's many avenues to success, and to trickle it down to just one single tunnel is unfair to the masses. And it definitely is a form of obedience, submission, and control. Like you have an automated workforce that will just do whatever you like as long as you pay them a small fucking penny.
Education system was designed for one thing and one thing only: to pump out mindless, thoughtless, standardized, dare I say it, slaves. John D. Rockefeller put it even more succinctly. He said, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." And if you look around today with all this fear, all this debt, all these years of education, and yet you come out not even knowing the basic fundamentals of how to survive in this world, like how to find a lifelong partner, save, make money, invest, and file taxes, when you look around and see all of this, I'd say that Rockefeller got exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, that's a bit of a harsh thing to say. I don't think it's entirely true.
So now you know that society is systematically designed to get you to slave away forever. How do you escape this? You escape it by finding a way to make a lot of money without having to work super hard like all the other docile workers. And the most practical way to do this is not what you think. The most practical way to do that is with a high-paying work-from-home job. There are work-from-home jobs out there that allow you to make $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 and up while working just a few hours a day from wherever you want. But the reason why you never hear anyone promoting work-from-home jobs is because pitching you on starting an agency or whatever sounds a lot sexier. But the reality is, although all those business models work, you gotta grind it out for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, with a very low chance of success. That's why most entrepreneurs end up slaving away more than someone with a 9-to-5. But a work-from-home job, you get the best of both worlds. The reward without the risk, the flexibility without the grind, and in some cases, you can even make more money than with the business by stacking work-from-home jobs on top of each other without increasing your workload, also known as overemployment. But the best part about work-from-home jobs is that truly anyone can land one. Problem is, how do you land one without a degree or experience? Luckily, I figured it out. See, before YouTube, I landed a $40 per hour work-from-home job at just 19 years old without a degree and barely any experience. That's $80,000 a year at just 19, from home. And this work-from-home job changed everything for me. It set me up to be where I am today. And the reason I was able to go remote without a degree or experience was because I came up with really innovative strategies that drastically increased my odds of getting hired. And I break it all down in our new masterclass called Exploit the System. With over 90 plus lessons in the same binge-worthy documentary style you've come to love, Exploit the System is the best course out there on going remote, because not only did it work for me at 19, but it also worked for
You can't do a whole ass documentary and then sell it with a course. But I mean, it was a good documentary in my opinion. Um, a lot of the stuff that he touched on is true. I don't think you should just go and buy a course because, like, let's be honest, landing a job is just a game of luck. You're just playing Russian roulette and hope you don't get shot. I mean, I've applied for so many jobs and uh, only a few come back. Like maybe his course has something that's actually useful, but I highly doubt that. There's no one size fits all for finding a job, like he's saying, that's work from home, that will get you paid, and that won't have you overworking. But the idea is correct in my opinion. If you have multiple work from home jobs, you're getting paid without the risk. If you lose one job, you got two more, right? Like if you have that mentality, and if you can land three jobs, then that would already look good on your resume. I mean, you can't put all of them at the same time, but like, if you even put one of them and it's like a good job title, that will get you more recruiters reaching out to you and giving you better opportunities for work from home. And you could keep increasing your pay like that. I think it's a great strategy, but I mean, it's hard to find companies that will pay you to do nothing though. So best of luck with that. What I do believe is that if you just give yourself a little bit of time to pursue your passions, just for once in your life, then I'm talking to myself. I mean, I don't really know who you are or whoever is watching. I'm talking about myself. Is just if you just give yourself a chance to pursue your passions without having to think about money or how you're gonna survive, and just do it for the fun of it, then that would probably be the best year of your life. Like you're you're doing exactly what you want to do. You're happy. Um, it doesn't even feel like work, possibly, and you have freedom to attack a problem however you want to attack it. You know, there's nobody holding your hand saying, "Don't do that." There's restrictions, blah blah blah. You know, um, and I think that's probably the most important lesson that I wanted to get to, that I've recently learned is that even if you are a failure from society's standards, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a failure entirely, because it just takes a snap for society to switch on you the way they think. Like one day they hate you, the next day they love you, you know? I mean, it's just how it goes. What matters most is like how you treat yourself in a sense. Because if you say, well, shit, I got nothing else going for me, let me just go find a job, then you're going to go find that job because you're determined to do that. But if you're determined to uh, actually give yourself a chance to try something and see where it leads, then it will lead somewhere, you know? But that you got to push to the unknown. And I mean, I'm just saying that for myself. Like, I don't like being one of those self-help gurus. I just like discussing problems that I see, because to be frank, I have no advice to give anybody. It's just a whole lot of shit that I realize as time goes by, you know, because I'm in no position to give advice anyways. I'm not successful by any means, but it's just fun to talk about these problems because somewhere in there is a solution. Otherwise, it wouldn't be considered a problem. Every problem has a solution. If you haven't found it yet, it doesn't mean there is no solution. It's just waiting for you at some point. Sometimes a solution to a problem is to just not solve the problem, not give it any attention. Um, and that's kind of what I've decided to do with like the whole money thing. Is don't give it any attention and focus on you. And if you keep focusing on yourself, then something's eventually got to work out, you know? Yeah. All right, let's find another video. Another thing I wanted to look at was psychopathy and business. I don't know. I'm just searching this now. I don't know if I'll find anything. Why are so many business leaders psychopaths? What working with psychopaths taught me about leadership, Corporate psychopaths. I want like a documentary style thing. I like documentaries. Business world promotes psychopathy. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll find a documentary, but this should be
Well,
interesting.
let me sort of on the AI safety. Do you think there's some interesting questions there, though, to solve for the open source community in this case? So, like alignment, for example, or the control problem. Like, if you really have super powerful, you said it's scary.
Oh yeah.
What do we do with it? So not control, not centralized control, but like, if you were then you're gonna see some guy or gal release a super powerful language model, open source, and here you are, George Haas, thinking, "Holy shit! Okay, what
Language
ideas do I
models
have
are,
to?"
for anybody who doesn't know, language models are used to build AI tools like ChatGPT. So ChatGPT runs based off of a language model that's in the background. Um, and what he's talking about is somebody creates a super powerful language model, whatever.
Combat this thing. So, what ideas would you have?
I am so much not worried about the machine independently doing harm. That's what some of these AI safety people seem to think. They somehow seem to think that the machine, like, independently is going to rebel against its creator.
So, you don't think you'll find autonomy?
No, this is sci-fi B movie garbage.
Okay. What if the thing writes code, basically writes viruses?
If the thing writes viruses, it's because the human told it to write viruses.
Yeah, but there's some things you can't like put back in the box. That's kind of the whole point.
Well,
is it kind of spreads. Give it access to the internet.
Yeah.
It spreads, installs itself.
Before we listen to his thoughts, my thoughts on that is that the language model is basically a collection of words and strings and code, anything you want to call it, that's on a computer screen that you could find on GitHub, Stack Overflow, YouTube, Reddit, whatever. It's just a collection of that compiled together, cleaned up a little bit, and then used to train an AI model. The reality is all of that comes from people, you know. AI is just the extension of people, in my opinion. Um, that's why um, that's why machine learning is a lot similar to neuroscience, in my opinion. Or sorry, not machine learning, deep learning. Deep learning has this concept of neural networks, similar to how we have neural networks in our brain. It's literally built to be a human or a subhuman. So the idea of it going and doing things unconsciously, or sorry, not unconsciously, consciously going and doing things on its own. I mean, yeah, it's very possible because humans go and do things on their own. But the the main thing to consider is that the worst things that humans can do, AI can probably do at some point, which he's probably going to disagree with. But I would say that there's going to come a point where an AI brain will be just as mature as a human brain. And human brains have done some nasty, wild, crazy shit in world history. Genocides, killings, but they've also done some great things. And the reality is it's black and white, you know? Or sorry, not black and white. There's a bit of gray in between the black and white. A lot of people do good things, and the same people do bad things, as well as neutral things. And I think AI would be the same way. The problem comes that with the power of AI. If AI is really powerful, it has the capability to do an extremely good thing and then an extremely bad thing, both in the same day. Because it has the power to do it. If you've seen The Boys, there's Homelander. Uh, Homelander is a parody of Superman, but bad. Homelander could go and save somebody in the morning and at night laser three people to death. I mean, that's the type of character he is. And that's how I see AI too. It's like right now, it doesn't have the capability to do anything crazy, but if it does, it will be like Homelander. I mean, it's going to be up to the AI whether it wants to do good on that day or bad.
Modify.
Let's see what he has to say.
Your shit.
B plot sci-fi. Not really.
Kind of the whole point
Well,
is it kind of spreads. Give it access to the internet.
Yeah.
It spreads, installs itself, modifies your shit.
B plot sci-fi. Not real.
Listen, I'm trying to work. I'm trying to get better at my plot writing.
The thing that worries me, I mean, we have a real danger to discuss, and that is bad humans using the thing to do whatever bad unaligned AI thing you want.
But this goes to the your previous concern that who gets to define who's a good human, who's a bad human.
Nobody does. We give it to everybody. And if you do anything besides give it to everybody, trust me, the bad humans will get it. Because that's who gets power. It's always the bad humans who get power.
Okay. Power. And power turns even slightly good humans to bad.
Sure.
That's the intuition you have. I don't know.
I don't think everyone. I just think that, like, here's the saying that I put in one of my blog posts. It's, when I was in the hacking world, I found 95% of people to be good and 5% of people to be bad. Like, just who I personally judged as good people and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they believed about, like, good things for the world. They wanted, like, flourishing, and they wanted, growth, and they wanted things I consider good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I came into the business world with comma, and I found the exact opposite. I found 5% of people good and 95% of people bad. I found a world that promotes psychopathy.
I wonder what that means. I wonder if that I wonder if that's anecdotal or if it if there's truth to that. There's something about capitalism.
Well,
at the core that promotes
it's not capitalism.
the people that run capitalism that promotes psychopathy.
That saying may, of course, be my own biases, right? That may be my own biases that these people are a lot more aligned with me than these other people, right?
Yeah.
So, I can certainly recognize that. But, in general, I mean, this is like a common sense maxim, which is the people who end up getting power are never the ones you want with it.
Yeah, I mean, what he said about capitalism, sure, capitalism has its holes, but no matter what political system you look at, there is corruption. Power corrupts. And more than power corrupting, it's the corrupt people that force their way into power and then give power a bad name. You see, Socrates did a whole thing about justice in the book The Republic, and there was a little passage in there about how the good people of the world lead out of necessity because there's no good around them. The bad people in the world lead because they want to. Now, whenever a revolution happens, it happens when things are really bad. It doesn't just happen out of the blue. But whenever a new president comes in, well, they come in every 4 years. I mean, what does that tell you? Like, there's people that genuinely want to be in power, and it's not necessarily to change things. They just like being in power, being in control, sometimes being in control of others. I mean, that's power kind of means that, but power also means that you're responsible for other people's well-being. Is to see that picture from both sides of, yes, I control this person's livelihood, and then the other side is, oh shit, I control this person's livelihood. I best do my job well. But a lot of people in power may not see that. And then there's other people who would come into power out of necessity. It wasn't necessarily their choice. It's just how circumstances played out because they were the most righteous at the time in a really evil time. Like Nelson Mandela, he wasted his youth for righteousness, and maybe to his unfortunate circumstances, he was put in power afterwards. I mean, he never really. I mean, I think he lived a good life from what we see in an outside perspective of, wow, look at this guy, very famous, very respected, everybody loves him. But I think the internal perspective is much different of how he had a broken marriage, didn't get to see his kids grow up because he was in prison, loved by his people, but even after prison, he was in a strong political position and he had responsibilities, which he was going to fulfill. He wasn't going to neglect them. So to fulfill them, he has to neglect something else in his life to balance it out. You can't have both. So I'm sure he sacrificed a lot of his personal time with his family and friends and peers to take up the mantle and help his country succeed and be in a better position than where it was when he started fighting. So, god damn, I don't even know how I started this. Yeah. So it's not just capitalism. I think it's just whenever you have a system, which is every system, that requires you to have a person or persons in power, is going to lead to something corrupted. That's just how humans are. I mean, I ain't got no textbook on it. I don't have any evidence on it, but this is just my own perspective of how I see the world, and I'm still pretty young, so that could change. Uh, but yeah, I mean that was interesting though. That he said that in the hacking community, 95% of the people were good from his perspective, and 5% were bad. But in the business world, it was the opposite. That's a pretty interesting thing. So it's not necessarily capitalism that makes people bad. It's business. Business, which I guess is greed. I'm not sure. But yeah, let's see this. I mean, this is 30. This is guy talking. I'm already talking to you. I can't have another guy talking to you as well. So, gonna look for something else. Seems like a skit. Oh, this seems interesting. Ask a psychopath. What are some things you've done?
What are some things you've done as a result of your psychopathy?
Sometimes when I think about these stories,
I've been saying it wrong. I've been saying psychopathy, I think. It's psychopathy. Oh, why does English take the fun out of everything, bro? Why can't they just have something that I can pronounce right the first time around?
these guilt stories, I don't know what people would feel guilt about. So I do have a little bit of mind blindness there, you know, like I've never lived the life of somebody who feels this empathy, this guilt way. And so I don't know what might trigger it. I've never have really felt anything for animals. You know, I've never had a pet or ever felt like a connection to animals. I've never like tortured animals. I know, you know, some psychopaths do for various reasons. You know, I never was one of those that tortured animals. But one time I was teaching swimming lessons. I went out, I saw there was this baby
Is there a camera that way, or she just doesn't want to look at the camera?
opossum. It was like this big, you know, just like struggling.
She looks at the camera for like 1 or 2 seconds and then looks away.
Struggling to try to get out of the pool, and I thought, oh, baby opossum must have fallen in the pool in the night or in the early morning, and now he's trying to get out. But I also thought, you know, opossum is a pest. I don't want this opossum around me. If I fish him out, then who knows what he's gonna do. You know, even like domesticated animals can kind of turn on you, especially when they feel like they're kind of in that fight or flight kind of moment. So I was like,
hold on, I gotta search something up. Give me a second. I was looking up courses before, but okay, this is gonna be a little gruesome, so fair warning. If you die in your house, will your pet eat you out of hunger after a few days? I heard this story once about a grandma. And I guess it's true. They will eat you. I mean, they're starving. If you die and they're not fed for 3 days, pets might eat their deceased owners after a few days due to hunger or instinctual behavior. This tends to happen with cats and dogs, the most common household pets, although it is more often associated with cats. Interesting. I thought it would be more associated with dogs, but it's the opposite. They're known to be more loyal and might stay by their owner's side for a while, possibly even try to rouse them. However, after a few days without food, desperation can set in, and they might start eating the body. Dogs typically start. Okay, I'm not. All right, that's okay. So, her fear, I guess I could call it fear. I don't know if psychopaths have fear, but her fear of a pet turning on her is not unrealistic, but very, very rare to happen.
Like I'll just drown the opossum. What I did is just got a hose and just kept like hosing him, so he's trying to like get up, and I'm
What
just
the
like in that
Hold up.
like
You drowned the
domesticated
opossum.
animals can kind of turn on you, especially when they feel like they're kind of in that fight or flight kind of moment. So I was like, I'll just drown the opossum. What I did is just got a hose and just kept like hosing him, so he's trying to like get up, and I'm just like trying to drown him with the hose, and I do that for like 5 minutes. And he's actually a trooper, this baby opossum. And so I thought,
That's
this is
crazy,
not
bro.
working.
This woman.
I will just cancel the swimming lesson and just go off and do something else, you know, go to the beach for that afternoon. I think maybe that seems cold-hearted to people, the way.
Yeah, it's a little cold-hearted, bro. That, like, if you're trying to drown an animal just because you think it's a pest, that's a little cold-hearted. Because that animal, truth be told, hasn't done anything to you except be in your vision, be in front of you. You want to kill it because you're like, oh, it's gonna be a pest once I get it out. It's gonna be out of your hair more than likely.
I went about it, but that's just kind of, and that's kind of an interesting thing too. We're socialized to think certain things are, different things are cold-hearted, and I guess I just am immune to socialization in general, most socialization. So one kind of example that stands out to me is I was living in Los Angeles, and it was like a 12-unit apartment complex. It was kind of a nice apartment complex, and I was an attorney at the time, and I was like making, you know, like well into the 6 figures. And so it was very comfortable for me to pay the rent. But I noticed that my neighbors across from me, they were driving like 1980s, 1990s Civics. Both of them were driving these old Civics. And I kind of thought, I wonder how these people are paying rent. I thought of it sometimes. I also noticed though that since they parked right next to me, that they had these 2 bikes that were collecting dust. So I had a friend visit me one weekend, and I thought, let's go biking. And I thought, well, I have my bike, but I don't have a bike for you. I don't want to like have to drive somewhere and rent a bike. You know, it's very inconvenient. Let's just take my neighbor's bikes. So I went down and I pumped up the air, and the seats had dust on them. I mean, they clearly hadn't been ridden for years, and they were just little cheap Schwinn guys, you know, probably $100 bikes or something. So we bike, and then we come back several hours later. We bike to the beach. You know, it was great. It was fun. And then in the evening, I get this knock on the door, and I go answer it. Luckily, it was me and not my roommate at the time. But I answer it, and it's my neighbor. And she said, you know, my bikes were missing earlier. You know, we were looking all over for them, and then we noticed that they were replaced. Do you know what happened with the bikes? And I said, yes, I took your bike and I borrowed it and I took it to the beach with my friend.
Oh, God.
And she was like color drained from her face. And she was so angry at me.
That's
and
crazy.
She was like, why would you do something like that? And I'm gonna call the police, and that's theft. And I said, it's probably not theft. Technically, if anything, it's conversion, the tort of conversion, and you'd have to sue me in small claims court. And I don't think the damages would be very high because I just took it for several hours. And that was kind of my reaction, but she was like livid. The thing that people find most shocking probably about the book is when I say that I'm probably smarter than the person reading the book. And I find that to be unusual, an unusual reaction. To me, for that to be the most shocking thing in the book is, it surprised me. I didn't understand why they would feel that way, because that's just statistically true. I mean, I score in the 99th percentile on all standardized tests, you know, like on the regular. Maybe there's been once or twice when I haven't scored out of the 99th percentile, but even on graduate school tests or something. So I think, you know, that is probably the more shocking thing, is that I'm just willing to kind of own things. You know, I think people find me to be narcissistic. I think they think that, you know, I have such a big ego, when really I just kind of feel like, you know I'm 5'4". I know I weigh the amount of pounds that I weigh. I know that I am like the whatever size in underwear, bra, shoe, you know, and I also know that I'm in the 99th percentile for sure for intelligence, at least as it's measured on standardized tests.
Okay. That gives me another question that I got for ChatGPT. How much do emotions have an effect on your overall intelligence. Do they hinder it in any way or do the opposite? Emotions can significantly influence overall intelligence, affecting both positively and negatively depending on the context and intensity of the emotions involved. Stress and anxiety. High levels of stress or anxiety can impair cognitive functions like memory, attention, and problem solving abilities. This happens because stress hormones like cortisol can disrupt the functioning of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher order thinking and decision making. Negative emotions, emotions like anger, fear, or sadness, can narrow focus, reduce creativity, and lead to impulsive decision making. When consumed by these emotions, individuals might struggle to think clearly, leading to poor judgment and a decreased ability to process information effectively. Um, and just emotional overload in general would probably break you down completely, like a mental breakdown. And how they can enhance it. Feelings like joy, excitement, or contentment can broaden cognitive abilities, enhance creativity, and improve problem solving skills. Emotional intelligence, ability to recognize, understand, and manage one's own emotions as well as the emotions of others, is a crucial aspect. So she may be book smart, but I'm pretty sure she's lacking hard on the EQ scale, the emotional intelligence scale. Um, Motivation and resilience, positive emotions, and a strong emotional foundation can enhance motivation and resilience. Balance of emotions and intelligence. Okay. How do psychopaths fare IQ wise? Are they smarter than the average man? So as a group, they don't have higher IQs than the average person. Many psychopaths have an average IQ similar to the general population. Some studies suggest that certain subtypes of psychopaths, particularly those who are more successful or high functioning, may have above average intelligence. Low IQ, on the other hand, there are also psychopaths with below average intelligence who may engage in more impulsive or poorly planned behaviors. Verbal. Okay, this is what I was talking about. Lack of empathy. Psychopaths typically have low emotional intelligence, particularly in areas related to empathy, guilt, and fear. However, they may be skilled at understanding and manipulating others' emotions for their own benefit. Cold cognition. Psychopaths often excel in what is known as cold cognition, the ability to process information logically without emotional interference. Um, do psychopaths feel anger, fear, or anxiety? That's they do experience emotions like anger, but their emotional experiences are often different from those of non-psychopaths. Their ability to feel fear and anxiety is particularly impaired, which is a hallmark of psychopathy. Holy shit. So, if businessmen are psychopaths, then that really just means that they're not afraid to take risks because they don't have fear and they don't have anxiety to do something that's not traditional. That's kind of what makes them psychopaths. Which is, I mean, that's what I'm understanding at least. Psychopaths can and do feel anger, often in response to frustration, perceived slights, or when their goals are blocked. Their anger can be intense and may lead to aggressive or violent behavior. Impulsivity and rage. Some psychopaths have difficulty controlling their anger, leading to impulsive outbursts. This can be part of their broader difficulty with impulse control and managing strong emotions. Blunted fear response. One of the most consistent findings in psychopathy research is that psychopaths have a diminished ability to feel fear. Dude, Loki, this is like a this is OP. Like, if you're making a character, RPG character, you like, yeah, this motherfucker doesn't fear anything. Like that would be a massive trait. Alright, anyways, they often have a lower startle response, reduced physiological reactions like sweating or heart rate increases to fear-inducing stimuli, and less activation in brain areas associated with fear. Risk-taking behavior. This lack of fear can contribute to their tendency to engage in risky behaviors without concern for potential negative consequences. Yeah, that's literally it. How are psychopaths at public speaking? Damn. Psychopaths can be quite skilled at public speaking, often excelling in areas that make them appear charismatic, confident, and persuasive. Hallmarks of a good leader, quote unquote. Let's see. I guess that all makes sense if businessmen are so charismatic and they always know the right thing to say to stay on the right side of the law and the right side of their workforce. Even if the workforce hates them, but they have nothing negative against them, then that must mean that they have a strong sense of control over their speaking skills and their body language. Like I've thought about it a lot. There's some jobs that I've worked where I fucking hate management, but I got nothing wrong to say about them or against them. I can't find anything negative. Um, and sometimes it's even for like companies. I mean, I'd go ahead and say it like Amazon. Like they have it on lock. They may all be psychopaths, but it's hard to get dirt on them. Like everybody knows the crazy shit they do, but it's hard to get dirt on them because they're pretty skilled in hiding that shit. They're definitely psychopaths, bro. And it's funny I say that because streaming on Twitch, which is owned by Amazon. But like, hey, it's true. If you're successful as hell, more than likely you abused people to get to that point. I mean, this will probably get me banned, but it's the truth. Nobody gets to the top without a little abuse. It's just I feel like it's a reality of things. Unless the people themselves put you at the top, then you bore the abuse for your life, and now the people have recognized it and are giving you a big shout out. Think I'm gonna bring Mandela into the picture again. Like Nelson Mandela, he took the abuse of the entire population, figuratively, maybe even literally, and then the population respected him for that, and they put him up on a mantle, rightfully so, in my opinion. All right, I've been streaming for an hour. I mean, I could probably keep going, but my eyes are tired, so I'm gonna call it a stream. Uh, I'm gonna start. I've already started actually uploading these to YouTube because now I'm starting to see the values in these streams. I mean, I think this was a good one, but we'll see how it turns out in the future. Anyways, peace out.